Okay, so good evening to all of you. This is your facilitator, Ramnath Dixit. You can just address me as Ram, that's R-A-M. Very simple to remember, very easy to pronounce. So first of all, let me heartily welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Couple of reasons why it makes it really, really special. First, today is a Saturday evening. Being on a learning session on a Saturday evening in itself talks a lot about the intentions of people who are attending the session. So first of all, let me begin by the word congratulations for having made the right choice and trusting us and the Work Better team to help you in some small way to improvise, enhance your personality. I think a few people are still likely to join in, so let them join in. But all those people who joined on time, once again, a big congratulations to all of you. So before we start with the session, let me quickly introduce myself. And if you have anything else you want to ask, you can do that. But I will also tell you how do we ask questions during the session. Okay. So as I said, I'm a facilitator. And most part of my life, I've been engaged in doing behavioral workshops. So what that means is I've been conducting sessions for organizations, for people from different walks of life on areas such as interpersonal skills, communication, presentation, leadership, and a host of other areas. In a nutshell, I love to interact with people because I think that gives me an opportunity to learn more about them, also understand how people think, how people tend to behave, and learn in the bargain. So that's precisely something which inspires me. All the more reason for me to be with you because I think this is going to be a fascinating session. I think this will be a rock star session for the simple reason we have got so many people coming from different walks of life, and all of you have certain expectations, certain things that you want to carry back from this particular session. So I will try my best to ensure that I'm in a position to help you wherever possible, in whatever way possible. So a few rules before we begin the session so that all of you are on the same page and we are all able to engage in a very productive dialogue. So first things first, now that you already have used the chat box, I think there are lots and lots of messages already circulating on the chat box. I know it's a wonderful evening. I know it's a great evening, but I think we can now pause saying good evening to each other, because if we keep on doing that, then all of us will keep looking at every time a new message pops up. Okay, so just hold on to your good evening messages for the time being. What we will do is we will now carry on with the show. So I'll explain you a few rules of how to use the online platform really, really well. For some people, you might be already used to it. For some people, this might be a completely new experience. Even if it's a new experience, let me assure you that there is nothing to be worried about. This is fairly simple, fairly straightforward, and yes, highly engaging, highly interactive. Now that might come as a surprise to you because normally we use the words engaging, interactive when it comes to classroom sessions or one-to-one sessions or sessions where we can see and feel each other. But nonetheless, let me assure you that even on this online platform, you're going to have a great time. Okay, how do we do that? Precisely the reason why we are going to enter into a small dialogue about how do we use this. Okay, so first and foremost, some people I see can still wish me, but please do not call me sir. I'm not your sir. I'm not a college professor. So if you want to address me anytime during the session, what do you say? That's it, Ram. Okay, that's very simple. So I'll be your friend, your host, your facilitator throughout the entire session. And as I said, let's understand a few basic things as to how do we get the maximum value out of these sessions. Okay, so there are a few features that we got to be aware of, which I'm going to explain you and understand how do we use these features. So now if you're able to see me properly, hear my voice properly, also see the presentation slide in the background, here is what you do. And maybe only 2 or 3 people can do this so that we know that you're a representative for the rest of us. If you can just type in the word yes, not everyone needs to do it because I'll then have 100 yeses. Just 2 or 3 people that you're able to see me, hear me. Okay, great. Thank you so much. You can stop now. So I got to know that you're able to see me and hear me properly. This is going to be roughly about an hour-and-a-half session. So now if you're wondering what are we going to do in an hour and a half, well, that's precisely the reason why we are here. So we'll explore as we progress during the session. Other thing is there are few features that we're going to use. So one of those features is called raise your hand, which means anytime I ask you a question, if you agree with me, or if you feel that, yeah, what Ram is talking about is correlated to my reality, all you can do is simply raise your hands, okay? So by doing so, you are telling me that you're with me, we are all on the same page, okay? So need not always go back to the chat box when you're in agreement with me. All you have to do is click on raise your hand. That's right. So a lot of people are trying that. If you haven't tried it, you can go ahead and click the button just to check if it's working fine on your systems, whether you're using a laptop or a mobile phone. Great. Okay, fantastic. So we'll keep using this raise your hand option throughout the entire session. Anytime that I ask you a question, if you're in agreement or if you acknowledge what I'm saying, just go back and click on this. Plus, we are also going to allow you to ask questions. That's the essence of why we are here. So if you have questions, here is what my recommendation is. All of you at this point in time should be having at least a notepad or a diary, preferably a diary, because that's the best way so that you can gather all the insights as we go through the session. And while you're doing that, two things you can note down. One is insights. Oh, this is something which I was looking for. I've been waiting for a long, long time, and this has been really useful. So let me make a quick note of this. Okay. So something which is important to you, make a quick note of that. That's an insight for you. Secondly, what you also note down is question. Any query, any question that you have, anything that you haven't understood, make a note of that. We will definitely love to take your questions. How are we going to take these questions? Well, for that, if you see on your panel, on your option panel, you see an option called Q&A. Do you see that? You can just give me a raise, show of hands if you're able to see the Q&A box. Good. So all you have to do is whenever you have a question, you go to the Q&A box and you type in your question. Okay. And I'll be taking your questions as we go along. Preferably, it would be better if you can ask your question towards the end of the session. But sometimes, you know, you have this urge, you want an answer then and there. So I will try my best that if you have a question, I'll help you with the answer then and there. Perhaps I will also give you some time during the session where we will pause so that I can take a few questions. But I'll be able to take bulk of your questions towards the end of the session because that gives us enough opportunity. So we also have in store for you something called as an after class. What is an after class? An after class is a concept where we receive all your questions and I answer all your questions. Okay, that way you get maximum response for your questions. It's like value for money, value for time, for all the questions that you throw at me. Okay, so that's the question and answer box. So we are clear with the raise your hand option. We are clear with the question and answer option. What do we do with the chat box? Well, the chat box, as the name suggests, is for us to chat with each other. But I want you to use it judiciously and smartly. So, for example, if you just have to say yes, no, you can use the raise your hand option, okay? Because imagine we currently have about 140 people in the session, all of them just saying yes, 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 yes. The chat box suddenly starts to look like a stock market indicator where the share prices are going up and down and everyone is looking at what's happening around. So let's not do that. The purpose of using the chat box is to have a holistic yet a very smart conversation. So the way you use your smart conversation box, that is a chat box, is by talking to the rest of us, something which you feel is going to add value to the discussion that we're doing. Okay. For example, as I'm talking to you, suddenly there is an experience. Oh, this is important. This is something which happened with me. I want to share this with Ram and the rest of us. Go ahead, use the chat box in a line or two. Also, when you drop something in the chat box, be crisp. Yeah, one of the essential formulas used in communication is the KISS formula. Keep it short and simple. So I would respect if you do that, because by doing so, we will be able to read what you're saying. And I can also share that with the rest of us. I will not be able to read everyone's comment in the chat box because of the sheer numbers that we're having on this session. Therefore, anything which is common theme, I will try and mix it together and I will play it back to you or I'll share it back with you. Okay, so that's one more thing. But do use the chat box. For example, if I'm asking you to respond to a particular question, you can go to the chat box and drop me your responses. So that's how we use the chat box. So we are done with the question and answer box. We are done with the chat box. We are done with the raise your hand option. Apart from all of this, there is one more option which you don't have to worry about. There is an option called poll. What is poll? We are part of democracy. So we are going to collect votes. What are these votes for? So if I ask you a question, which I think needs to be answered by all of us together, I will be launching something called as a poll, which is basically a question with some options, with some alternatives, just like an objective question you used to have in exams, right? So a statement with a few options. Now there is no correct or wrong answer here at this point in time. So therefore, when you see this poll option with a few pointers under it, you have to select the one that you feel is the correct answer for you. So based on your reality, based on what is applicable to you, you select an option. Okay, and that's it. That's pretty much about it. So that's the poll option. Very, very fascinating option. Let me tell you this. So I'm going to share that with you as well. Towards the end of the session, we also have something called as a learning assessment. What is a learning assessment? So as the name suggests, an assessment is a quick evaluation. Now, the purpose of this evaluation is not to see whether you're smart or you're not smart. We all know you're obviously smart. That's why you're here. The purpose of this assessment is just to see how much of what we have discussed during the session have you been able to retain. Okay. So towards the end of the session, I will be uploading a link in the chat box. And when you click the link, it will take you to a particular web server or a particular place where you can attempt a small quiz, which is called a learning assessment. So there will be 10 questions. Each question will have some options, some answers. You have to choose the correct option. This time it's not what you feel is right. This time based on what is actually right. Okay. Now, what happens after the assessment? When you give the assessment and if you score 70% or more than 70%, hooray, you are eligible to receive a wonderful certificate. Okay, which tells you that you've attended the session and you've gained this particular knowledge on interpersonal skills. Okay, so that's something which is very, very fascinating, very, very exciting. Okay, and we will do it towards the end of the session, not now. So I'll be uploading the link on the chat box. All you have to do is click on the link and it will automatically take you to the learning assessment. But don't worry about it. It's something which is, as I said, a formality for us to know how much have we retained. So don't overtly think about, oh, assessment. No, I want you to enjoy the session as well as we discuss along. Okay. So far, are we all on the same page? Have you understood everything? Give me a show of hands if you've understood all the rules, if you're clear about what I told you. Perfect. Great. So glad to see that all of you are in agreement. So just to help you, a small tweak here. Now, whenever I ask you to only click on the raise your hand option, please use the raise your hand option. As you can see now, I can at least see 30, 40 yeses on the chat box. This is going to be really difficult for me to read all your yeses and nos. So when I ask you specifically to raise your hand, you only click on the raise your hand option. Are we clear about this? Because there are many of us here. Even if every person says, I only said once, but even if you say it once, there are 150 people. So that means 150 yeses. Okay. So use the raise your hand option when I specifically ask you to raise your hand. Only when you have a statement to make, we will be able to, give you a message on the chat box. You can use the chat box when you have a message or something else that you wish to share. Okay, so all of you also make sure that on the chat box, you have turned your option to all panelists and attendees. So right at the bottom of your chat box, you will see a small button, a drop-down menu. In that, you have to select all panelists and attendees, which means whenever you type in something, it will be available or it will be visible to all of you. Okay, so there has been a request for me to come closer to the mic. I think some people aren't able to hear me completely. So are you all able to hear me properly? Is that loud and clear? A show of hands for some people. Okay, perfect. Now here is my request. Because we are doing something which is purely based on technology enabled platform, we are using internet here. So in case you're using a phone or mobile phone on which you are accessing the entire session, or for that matter, even on a laptop, please make sure that you're not mobile, that you're not moving, because different places will have different kind of network connectivity. So it would be better that you stay positioned, stay stationary, because that will ensure that your network connectivity does not get disturbed, right? Perfect. So on that note, I think we're done with the rules. Enough of the rules now. Okay, so I'm sure all of you have understood the rules really well. We now move on with the session. It was important for me to tell you the rules because it will only help you get the best out of these sessions. Okay, so let's look at what we have in store now. We have a poll. Okay, so I'm going to launch a poll. There is a question which is going to appear on your screen. So when you see this question, all you have to do is you have to respond to this particular question. There will be 3 options. You have to choose one of those which you feel is the right option. There you go. So you now see the poll on your screen, and you can go ahead and respond to this. So I'm just going to wait for 10 seconds more. I think a few people are still casting their vote. So let's give them 10 seconds more, and post that I will tell you what results have you received. Okay, those who have answered it, great. Those who are yet to answer, please go ahead and answer. So let me give you a counter of 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's it. Okay, so let's now look at what are the responses, what I have received from people, and based on which there will be a fair idea of what people have voted for. Okay, so I'm going to share the results with you. So you might be able to see on your screen now that out of the people who voted, about 4% people said that they're simply interested in the topic. You know, I want to learn something about interpersonal skills. I've heard of it for quite some time. So dekh lete hain, hai kya interpersonal skills? You know, that kind of a pointer. So about 4% people have said that overall interest. 46% people have said that I want to develop my ability to build rapport easily and interact with other people. I want to connect with other people. I want to understand how do I go about building a bond with other people, how to connect with them, how to build relationships. That's my reason for joining the session. Okay. And 51%, which is the thumping majority, exactly 51%, people say I'm learning this for my professional skill enhancement connected to my workplace. जहाँ पर काम पे जाता हूँ वहाँ पर बहुत जरूरी है. So I need to learn about this. You know, I need to know what is interpersonal skills. How do you apply this? And how do you get the best out of the interpersonal skills that one needs to have in the context of the workplace? Good. So I'm very happy to know that all of you are very clear about. Okay, so don't worry about the total percentage that you see on screen. It is basically an indicator figure. Okay. So now that we know the reason why you're attending this session, it's all the more important that you remember this reason as we go through the session. कि आप यहाँ पर क्यों हैं? Okay, it's your choice. You have made this choice to attend your session, and you should be very clear about your objective, because unless you have a clear objective, maza nahi hai session attend karega. Okay, so let's try and understand if we are going to get what we are anticipating. So here is what we're going to do in the session. Two things, two major points that we're going to cover. 1.5 घंटे का session hai. So based on this, you're going to focus only on two things. But both these elements are going to be very, very vital. कौन से दो चीजें? The first one is we're going to understand कि interpersonal चीज है क्या? Why are we even learning about interpersonal skills? There are so many things in the context of communication, but why interpersonal skills? So we'll try and understand more about it. Second, we will also try and understand what are the 3 elements of interpersonal skills. So there are multiple elements, okay? There is a host of topics connected with interpersonal skills. It's an ocean in itself. But what we're going to do is, we're going to look at 3 important elements, not the whole ocean. So these 3 elements, we will discuss in further detail. You will get to know about these 3 elements shortly. But what I'm telling you is, हम पूरा का पूरा महासागर नहीं देखेंगे, हम कुछ पहलू देखेंगे. We'll look at few elements which will help us understand more about interpersonal skills. So before we talk more about it, I would like you guys to tell me, ये interpersonal skills है क्या? So this is the first time you go to your chat box now. And if you can quickly tell me, what is your understanding of this term called interpersonal skills? If you can just quickly drop me a message in the chat box and share your opinion about it. What do you think are interpersonal skills? Don't give me a textbook definition, whatever comes to your mind. Okay, so I'm reading what you're sharing with me. So for the next 15 seconds, so I'm going to kind of ask you to hold your opinions in the next 15 seconds. Okay, so that we know when do we start and when do we close. Okay, so a lot of people are saying it's the ability to interact, mingle with people, ability to work with people, way of interacting with people, connecting with colleagues. Okay, all right, okay, fair enough. So a lot of people have talked about the fact that the ability to have great interpersonal skills means your ability to connect with people. Okay, you can hold on your thoughts now. You can stop now so that we can discuss. So if you can just keep writing and typing, then you'll not be able to focus on what I have to say. So good, very good. I think we are all on the same page. I completely agree and second your thought that when we talk of interpersonal skills, it's our ability to connect with other people. Now, who are these other people? In the context of organizations, we also call them stakeholders. Kaun hai bhai stakeholders? People whom we work with, our peers, right? We also need to connect with them, understand their psyche, talk to them. Our manager is a very important stakeholder. Similarly, when we talk to our clients or customers, they are also our stakeholders. But what if you're not working in an organization? Let's say, what if you're running your own business? Even then, you will talk to a lot of people. You talk to your friends, you'll talk to your clients. If you're a student who's still studying in a college or maybe a part of a management institute, even then, you will interact with people. So no matter what you do, you will interact with people. And we all like people. We can't stay lonely. One of the reasons the current lockdown is a tough phase for many people is because we can't talk to other people. It's very difficult. It's not that we can't, but it's really difficult to connect with other people because of the social distancing. It's become really, really difficult. Yet, in the modern world, if you want to be successful in anything that you do, anything, whether it's your business, whether it's your job, whether you are a student, whether you are a freelancer, whatever you do, you have to have the ability of connecting with people. The ability to connect with people, to convince people is what makes it really an important skill. And therefore, when we talk of interpersonal skill, it is the relationship that you have with other people. आपका दूसरों के साथ जो रिश्ता है, जो ताल्लुक है, that is what we call as interpersonal skills. So let's try and understand more about how do we go about connecting, how do we go about building great interpersonal skills so that we are able to convince people, so that we are able to understand them better. So now that you answered the first question, I want you to identify any person from your personal or even your professional life. If you're a student, maybe you can pick someone who's your friend. If you are working in an organization, maybe someone who's your colleague, someone who you think has got great interpersonal skills. Okay, but it's not just important to pick that person because we don't know that person. You know him or her well. I also want you to tell me what you think makes this person really special when it comes to interacting or dealing with others. कि जिसको भी मैंने pick किया ना, क्या खासियत है? Why have I picked this person? Because this person is good at interacting with other people. What makes that interaction special? What is so special about it? For example, the moment you talk about Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, nobody can argue that he's got great interpersonal skills. He's got amazing ability to connect with people. Similarly, we don't know Amitabh Bachchan personally, but you definitely know people at your workplace, people who are your friends, or even your family members for that matter. Who was of them, my brother is amazing, you know, my sister is very good at connecting with people. Most of that. So you got to tell me what is special about that. Okay. So you can go to your chat box now and you can start dropping in your messages. And I would love to know what you think makes these people special. Khas kya hai unme? So Lalit here has pointed out that his boss, he thinks, is a very good at interpersonal skills because he can convince people easily. Okay. Mullah says that my mentor, he again can convince people easily about business plans. Okay, so you're talking in a professional context now. Rupali says our CEO is good at it. Okay, very good. Amit says, so Amit, I don't know whom you're talking about. So you need to give me a name or the person. Again, Jayachandran, if you're saying your regional head, also tell me why. What makes him or her special? So you got to also give me the reason that makes them special, right? Because I don't know the reason. You know the reason. Okay, for example, the reason could be he's very good at convincing. Okay, that's one reason why he is got amazing interpersonal skills. The other reason could be, oh, well, he can easily talk to even strangers. Kisi se bhi baat kar sakta hai. That's a great asset to possess. Okay, so Arvind says my boss because he's got convincing capability and puts a lot of energy. Great. Mahesh says my wife because of her great networking and helping skills. Fantastic. Someone says, Rajesh Priya said that her friend has got ability to connect and therefore he can talk to anyone. Excellent. So now you can stop your comments in the chat box and just come back. So you can stop now, you can take a pause. So whenever I say pause, you can hold your comments in the chat box. You can come back to the discussion. So you have listed so many people. Some of you have said boss. Some of you have said family members. Like for example, someone said my wife. Someone would say my sibling. Many of you have also said my friend. Okay, someone who's very close to you, someone with whom you have been working at the workplace, or someone whom you know since a long time. Maybe a college friend, maybe a school friend, or someone who's a friend at the workplace. So काफी सारे लोग हैं. But if you see some commonality, some common threads, one common thread that comes through is the ability to convince other people. Do you agree to that? Give me a show of hands. This time I want you to give me a show of hands, not the chat. Okay. So commonality is the ability to convince people, the ability to persuade people. Persuade का मतलब क्या है? I can simply convince anyone about an idea that I have got, or I can tell people that, look, this is how you need to do it and people follow me. So even within our friends circle, we have someone who has that ability, the knack to, whatever I say is the right thing. He might not want to say that directly, but you still believe in him because he has the ability to convince, the ability to persuade. In short, the ability to build rapport with all the people in the team. And these are the kind of qualities that we require both in the professional context as well as in the personal context. Why in the professional as well as in the personal context? Well, there are many reasons for it. Because in today's world, it's important that we reach out to people. It's important that we reach out to people. Let's say, for example, you have a group of 10 people at work. 10 लोगों का group है. Yeah. And you have joined this organization afresh. पहला दिन है company में. Now, when you join this organization, the day one, you're a bit skeptical. You don't know how to go about talking to people. And therefore, what you do? You are seated at your desk, right? And someone, after about 10-15 minutes, someone approaches you and says, hi, I'm so-and-so. What's your name and what do you do? And suddenly, you feel it's very easy. Why? Because you start an interaction even with a stranger and you feel lighthearted. Now, that's what we require. We want to be that person. We want someone who takes proactive lead and approaches other people. Because if we keep waiting for people to come and talk to us, that may happen or it may not happen. Correct? So a lot of people agree to that. So how do we be proactive? How do we go about talking to people, even if they are strangers? Because sometimes we need to, especially at the workplace context or even in our personal life, sometimes you need information from other people. Arey, sab kuch chodo yaar. When you go to a new place, even if you have Google Maps, you know, Indians have this ability of asking people on the street, bhai sahab, ye address kahan par hai, zara bata sakte ho? We go to a pan guy, we go to a vegetable vendor, we talk to a stranger. Even that is interpersonal skill in a very small way, but even that requires the ability to connect and talk to strangers, right? And even the way you ask the question, for example, you can say, bhai sahab, ye bataoge? And then say, no, I don't know, yaar. You find it out on your own. Or you can say, excuse me, zara ye address chahiye tha. Can you please help? Small things, but makes a huge difference. So even when it comes to small things, it is very important that you're able to connect with people really, really well. And you're able to get information out of them. So that is where interpersonal skills becomes really, really critical for us. So as we have just seen, what are interpersonal skills? In a simple sense, these are skills that we need on a routine basis. Har din zarurat padti hai inki. Whether you're working in an organization or you're running your own business or you're a student or you're a freelancer or you're doing something else or you're a performer for that matter or you're an artist. In all these cases, you require the ability to connect with people. Because if you cannot connect with people, it becomes difficult for you to establish relationships. Okay. So I would like to know how many of you are here, and be very honest about it. Raise your hands if, raise your hands if you feel that I find it very difficult to talk to strangers. Doston ke saath to baat ho jati hai. With my friends, I can talk anytime. But when it comes to strangers now, I really feel a lot more panic. I can't talk to them openly. How many of you feel like that? That I can't talk to strangers? So a lot of people have said that talking to strangers is not an easy thing. Okay, so I would easily say more than 50-60 people have raised their hands right now. So almost 1/3 of people that we have on board have said that talking to strangers, difficult hai bhaiya. So what do we do about this? How do we go about connecting the dots there? So we have already defined what is interpersonal skills. So I think we are all having clarity about it. But the fact is, even when it comes to talking to someone who is a stranger, here are a few things that we can do. I'm going to give you a technique here. Okay. And I'm going to give you a technique which I think will be extremely, extremely helpful. So let me give you the technique. There are 3 steps to this technique, and you can use this anywhere with anyone. Okay. Whether it is someone who is a stranger in the business context, someone who is a stranger in personal life, you can still use this very effectively. So what is the technique? Let's say you meet someone. You'll meet someone in a conference, or you meet someone at a theater, or you meet someone at the railway station or at the airport. Okay. Now, you've just seen this person, the person has looked back at you, and many times we're all working. So we're all reading something, or we're looking at our laptop, we're doing something. So we're all busy, right? We're all plugged in at times. And in fact, unfortunately, sometimes what happens is when we are only thinking about what we are doing, we miss out on opportunities to connect with the other person. Hota hai ki nahi hota hai? Yaar, main gaane sun raha hu, I'm watching a movie, I'm reading a newspaper, or I'm reading a book. So I'm all by myself and I'm not looking at the other person. So what happens if you're reading a book or you're looking at your tab and suddenly you look at someone who's sitting right next to you, that person looks back at you and there is this awkward silence for a moment now. Ab karu kya? Baat karu ki nahi karu? That's a very difficult thing to answer. But here's the thing. When you look at someone, one of the basic things you can ensure by default is to maintain a smile on your face. And I know it's not easy for many people to look at strangers and smile. Well, that's the whole thing. Whether it's a stranger or someone you know, it doesn't require you to know the person to smile at the person. It's an acknowledgement from one human being to another human being. Give me a show of hands if you agree with this. कि जरूरी नहीं कि आप किसी को पहचानते हो उसकी तरफ देखकर मुस्कुराने के लिए. You can look at someone and you can just simply acknowledge the presence of that person. That good. But otherwise, normally what happens in our context, especially in the Indian context, and I've seen this happening over and over again. So you're reading something, suddenly you look at someone, and then you again, you just look at that person, you start reading again. So don't take your eyes off, just acknowledge the person. That's the basic thing you could do when you want to start a conversation. And trust me, even when you look at someone and do this, hi, or even if you just nod or smile, if you don't even say anything, that is the beginning of a connect with the other person. That is what is called being proactive. Now, many people say, I smile with my friends. I smile when I look at my manager, with my clients. It comes more professionally. It comes more easily. या फिर मैं जब अपने professor को देखता हूँ, I can easily smile. When I look at my friend, I can easily smile. But how do I smile at a stranger? And sometimes ladies might ask, is it good to smile at strangers as well? Well, as I said, it's human connection. When you look at someone with a sense of warmth, when that person also looks back at you, you can genuinely smile. Now, how do you bring in this genuine smile? Okay, so here's what I do. And I would like to recommend that to you as well. Every time you watch yourself in the mirror, हर बार अपने आप को जब आईने में देखो ना, just smile at yourself. Yeah, because if you can't connect with your own self, there is no way you can connect to a stranger. Am I correct about it? हम अपने आप को तो रोज देखते हैं ना आईने में, but if you can't talk to yourself, अपने आप को देख के डर जाओगे तो दूसरों के साथ बात कैसे करोगे? So it's very important that you acknowledge your own presence every time you are in front of the mirror. Look at the mirror and just smile. Now, what is the advantage? सोचने में पागलपन लगता है, but it's not. The advantage is this, that next time when you look at a person, you by default end up smiling. It's like a screensaver. Yeah, you look at a human being and you smile, and there has to be a genuine smile. For example, you don't need to, that's not required. You don't need to show all your teeth, but a gentle smile, hello, and just nodding, just acknowledging the presence is the beginning of almost every relationship, every time. Okay, and I'll tell you something about my life. When I have a lot of friends today, and I'm very glad that I have so many friends today. One of the things my friends told me about me initially is that, "Arey, humko dar lagta tha." I said, "Why?" They said, "The reason we were afraid to talk to you is because when we observed you from a distance, you looked very serious. You looked so serious that we were scared to talk to you." Hota hai na aise? That sometimes you enter the office and all you see is scared faces. Everyone is staring at you. Okay, log phati aankhon ke saath dekh rahe hain aapko. Nobody is talking, and that makes it very, very difficult. So therefore I made a small change. What was a small change? I made sure that even if I'm working, there is no harm in smiling. Yeah, I can still keep a gentle smile on your face. And that gentle smile ensures that people are able to connect with you. And that makes it easier for people to approach you. It's not necessary that every time you will approach people. Sometimes people would like to approach you. So when they see a smiling face, when they see a pleasing personality, people like to talk to someone like that. So simple beginning is have a simple smile on your face. Makes it easier for people to connect with you. Sehmat ho is baat ke saath? Do you agree with me? Give me a show of hands if you agree with what I just said. That a simple smile can go a long, long way for people to connect with you, talk to you. There you go. Wonderful. So that's the first stage, is the power of a genuine smile when you're talking to strangers. What you also can do to complement this is once that you start talking to people, smile while to ho gayi. Now you started communicating with people. So you said hello, hello, and you've said hi to each other. And then the person would start talking to you. You would start talking to the person. So the first thing you do after acknowledging, so jo pehle kiya na smiling, that's called acknowledging. Okay, so smile is part of the acknowledgement. The second thing that you do is you need to ask questions, even simple questions. What kind of questions? So hello, so I'm Ram. Who are you? What's your name? And the person would respond to you with whatever answer he has to give you. So he will give you his answer. And then therefore you can back it up with a few more questions. What could be these questions? Can you give me some responses in the chat box? I'm going to give you the opportunity to respond for 10 seconds. 10 seconds mein de raha hu aapko. Respond in the chat box. What are some of the questions you can ask when you're talking to a stranger for the first time? Kis tarah ke sawal pooch sakte hain aap? Okay. So give me a few examples that you can ask when you meet someone for the first time. Okay. Ho sakta hai personal, ho sakta hai professional. You meet someone at the airport. What would you do? Okay. Great. So you can pause now. You can pause. So when I say pause, you can hold on your comments in the chat box. So I see a lot of questions which are absolutely perfect. Is that you'll first ask, hello, I'm so-and-so. You always say, my name is so-and-so. And then you ask for, okay, what's your name? And then you get to know about the person's name. And then you ask a few basic questions. Okay, for example, if you're at the airport, as Gaurav says, which flight are you boarding? You know, where are you headed to? That's a very simple question, obvious question, but you can get an answer for that. And then which city do you belong to? What work do you do? Where are you working? Okay, do you have your own business, or are you here for your organization's work? Or are you self-employed? Are you doing any business? Whatever kind of question which will help you to enter into the conversation. But what is important when you ask these questions is that you are at ease. Don't ask these questions as a formality. You're not holding a checklist. Aapka naam bataiye, okay, tick mark. Okay, where do you work? Okay, tick mark. It can't be a checklist. It has to be a human to human interaction. And for it to become a human to human interaction, it's important that you're at ease. Okay, Salo, I'm Ram. What's your name? Great, Girish. Okay, thank you, Girish. And what do you do, Girish? Where are you up to these days? Okay, and Girish says, I'm working with this organization and this is what I do. Oh, good. And you're from which city? Great, great, great. So what you're doing is few basic questions where you have received responses. So what does happen because of this? Well, once you have asked your questions and received responses, listen. Very important that you listen. And this is where a lot of people go wrong, because we are so obsessed talking about ourselves. Acha, I'll tell you about myself. Main kya karta hu? And then we continue for 10 minutes and that just puts off people. So don't talk about yourself much. Listen to what the other person has to say. And then once you have listened, what would the other person do? Naturally, he or she would ask you questions. So by the way, what do you do, Ram? Okay, and you're also from Mumbai? Okay, good, good. And you're working with some organization, etc., etc. You can see how questions lead to that interaction. तो आपने क्या किया? आपने पहले कुछ सवाल पूछे, सवालों के जवाब मिले. When you received answers, you listen to those answers, and then you wait for the other person to ask you a few questions. And these are not complicated questions. These are very basic questions. But what is important here is that you ask questions where an answer is possible, and along with those questions, you have an intent to listen. The intent to listen is going to be very, very important so that the other person gets an opportunity to speak. Remember, don't make it about yourself. It's about the other person. Okay, so give the other person an opportunity to speak. And last but not the least, so we start with acknowledge, first step, then questions, listen, and here's the last step. The last step is whenever you find something interesting in the conversation, appreciate that. For example, the other person says, basically, I'm actually an actor. I work in television serials. Oh, wonderful. That's very great to know. Excellent. A quick opportunity for you to appreciate. Everyone loves appreciation. Okay, and genuine appreciation. So when you quickly appreciate something that comes to you, your notice, appreciate that. People remember it, and they also reciprocate. Yeah. So it's like this. You're interviewing someone, and you're interested in the interview. And every time you get an opportunity to appreciate, bang on, you need to appreciate. Okay. So those are the 4 simple steps that you can follow when you talk to a stranger. What are the 4 steps? Step number 1, acknowledge. When you look at someone, just nod. Just acknowledge their presence. Okay. Step number 2, ask questions. Questions where simple answers are possible. Okay. Don't ask complicated questions. Also, refrain from asking anything too personal. Okay. For example, you don't want to ask someone, are you married? Do you have any kids? No, not necessary in the first interaction. Maybe after you spend quality time, now that you see there is comfort level, later stage you can bring in that question. But you don't want to start a question with, hello, what is your name? Are you married? No, that's too disastrous. Okay. So just be careful about the kind of questions that you begin with. So question, step number 2. Step number 3, listen to what the other person has to say. And then step number 4, every time there is something interesting that comes up in the conversation, you appreciate that. Okay. And by doing that, you build a quick connect. Okay. So are we clear up till this point? Are you all clear about what has been spoken? If you're clear, yeah, give me a show of hands if you're clear about what has been spoken so far. Phenomenal. So there is a question that has been asked, and I'm going to take this question. Namrata has asked a question here. And the question is, how do you interact with introvert people? The introvert people, who are these people? So introverts are those people who are finding it difficult to talk to people. Okay. These are people who naturally do not have the ability to connect with other people. So it does not mean they don't want to talk. It's that they find it difficult to talk. So how many of you here on this forum find yourself to be an introvert? Here, I find it very difficult to talk to anyone. Forget about outsiders. Sometimes I don't talk with my own family members for a few hours when I'm at home. So it's possible, nothing wrong with that. But you will find people who are naturally outgoing, who are extrovert, and there are some people who are not naturally outgoing, so they're introverts. So how do you connect with introverts? Here's a trick. Do not push them. For example, if you look at the same 4 steps, acknowledge, question, listen, and appreciate. When you question them, give them time. Give them time to answer. Okay. And if you see that they are answering only in yes, no, okay, that means they are still wanting more time to open up. Don't push them. I need more information. Give me more information. No, don't do that. Never ever push people into giving more answers, because that can make them feel uncomfortable. So Namrata, when you're talking to someone who is an introvert for that matter, who doesn't talk to people much, introvert people need some more time as compared to extrovert people, because that's not their natural style. Okay. So by giving them more time, you give them an opportunity to think through their responses. Also, they're thinking about what should be their response, and therefore they'll be able to interact with you in a better manner. Okay. So I think the trick here is to give people slightly more time in general, so that they can open up and they can give you responses. So here is a question that I would like to ask you guys. According to you, why is it important for professionals to develop their interpersonal skills? So one is we saw that if you want to connect with even a stranger, it's important. But in general, a lot of people, 51% people said that we want to develop our professional skills from the workplace context. Why? And how would interpersonal skills help? So I'm going to give you 10 seconds. In those 10 seconds, let me see what you mention in the chat box. Okay. Okay. So you can pause with your comments now. You can pause with your comments. Let's come back to our discussion. So it is quite possible that you might have a number of reasons, but in general, as I can see with your messages, it is basically to connect with people, build relationship with people, for personal growth, for professional growth. All of these are reasons. Even to negotiate, when you negotiate with the organization on your salary, or when you negotiate with the client, or when you negotiate with your partner or your peer for work, or even in personal life, when you negotiate with other people, you require some amount of interpersonal skills. So I think it's therefore important that you are completely in sync with what you need to know. Yeah, you need to also understand and learn more about people. So that's one more reason why you got to learn about other people. So before I take this discussion ahead, I'm going to quickly address one more question that has come up. I don't see the name, but I'll read out the question for you. The question is, when we're talking to someone who's an introvert, what if the person feels that you're trying to forcefully talk to them? Arey, to zabardasti gale pad raha hai. That is the feeling. Well, that's the whole trick. When you talk to a stranger and you see that the person is not comfortable talking to you, you got to step back. See, the whole objective of talking to people is to build a connect. And you cannot build a connect if you're forcibly doing it. So sometimes you ask a question, and if you don't see a response coming in from the other end, you acknowledge and you just step back. Give that person some more time so that he or she can be comfortable to continue with the conversation, right? Okay, so as I can see, a lot of people have said in terms of their professional career, the reason they want to develop is for learning, getting to know more about people, and various other things. So here are some of the reasons, top reasons why we need to know about interpersonal skills. One is we use it daily. There is no day when we don't talk to people, including our own family members, our friends, outsiders, anyone in general. We also need this so that our interactions become very, very seamless. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए हम बात कर रहे और अटक रहे हैं, isn't it? That we're getting stuck somewhere and the other person says, oh, I don't feel interesting, that this conversation is not leading anywhere, there's no interest in it, let's just stop it. That shouldn't happen. You got to have this conversation very, very seamless, smooth, and that makes it interesting. People also need to build fabulous relationships, okay? And you would all agree with me that people with great interpersonal skills have also learned to build fabulous relationships. Do you agree with that logic? Give me a show of hands if you agree with me, that your interpersonal skills also help you to build solid relationships. Okay, and here is something which is backed by research, something which statistics tells us. A 2016 study tells us that people who are good at interpersonal skills, and who have the ability to work with other people well, their productivity and their overall ability to collaborate with people has gone up by 50%. Similarly, another study shows that there are 60% employers who consider that your ability to work with other people in a group is far more important. Today, the world is all tied up together. So it's not that you're going to work alone. You'll also have to work with other people. So that's also a place where interpersonal skills become very, very important. In an organization, you're working with 50, 60, 100 people all at the same time. Even in a meeting, there are at least 15, 20 people. So you've got to be able to connect with them. Similarly, another research shows that when you have great interpersonal skills, you enjoy your working relationships. And that's why when you have great relationships at the workplace, you love to spend time in the office. Your work productivity goes up. Work doesn't look like work. Kaam nahi lagta, because you're working with people where you enjoy working with them. And that is only possible when you have amazing interpersonal capabilities. So I'm going to leave you with one more poll here. So time for another question. And this is an interesting question as well. So take a look at this, and I want you to rate your own self. You have to rate your own self. What is the basis of rating? Here is the question. So you have to rate and tell us, in terms of interpersonal skills, what do I consider of myself? Am I poor? Am I average? Am I reasonably good? Or am I excellent? So go ahead and vote. Okay, so based on your responses, this is what we have received. Okay, and it's a very fascinating response. So I'll tell you what results have we got here. So a small fraction of the current population, and the good thing about this poll is no one knows who has voted for what. Okay, so a very small fraction, about 6% people have said, I'm not that good. I am a poor who. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I think it's important to know that you're even poor at your ability to interact and communicate, and your overall ability to have great interpersonal skills when it comes to people. That's okay, nothing to worry about it. A lot of people have said average. 21% people have said average. 61% people have said they're reasonably good at it. Matlab, kaam chal jata hai. I'm not that great, but I'm still not that bad. Okay, so about 61% people believe that they're okay at it, reasonably good. While 12% people believe they're excellent at interpersonal skills. So the next session will be conducted by these 12% people who have voted themselves to be excellent in terms of interpersonal ability. Just kidding. Okay, so good. If you're really good at it, fantastic. But here's the thing. No matter how good you are at interpersonal skills, you always have an opportunity to become better at it. And that is why we are here, because we're just going to look at perspectives. So don't consider that everything that we're telling here are the only things that you can practice. There are multiple other things that you can do when it comes to your ability to have great interpersonal skills. So just a perspective, nothing right or wrong about this, just a self-assessment. So how do you go about improving it? What if I'm not that good? What if I'm at a lesser pedestal right now? So here are a few things that you need to work on in interpersonal skills. So this is a laundry list. All of these things are included in interpersonal skills. But for the sake of our further discussion, we've only talked about only 3 things. As of today, only 3 things. What are the 3 things we're going to talk about? We've already spoken about rapport building, connecting with people. And why is it important? The other 2 things that we're going to spend time now, one is called empathy and the other is called teamwork and collaboration. Okay, because we're talking ultimately about the ability to work with people. So we're going to talk about 2 more things. Rapport building is something which we have already discussed. We've opened a discussion with that, but we'll also continue to discuss it wherever required. But 2 more elements of interpersonal skills. One is going to be empathy and the other is teamwork and collaboration. Okay. So in terms of these 3 points, just to remember them well, when it comes to rapport building, we call it connect, the ability to connect with other people. Then comes empathize. How do I step into the shoes of the other people? दूसरों के नजरिए से कैसे सोचा जा सकता है? And this could be anyone. It could be a stranger, it could be your father, your mother, your sibling, your boss, your peer, your client, anyone. How do I look at things from others' perspective? And lastly, how do I collaborate with people? How do I put together my efforts with other efforts so that we look at a common objective? Okay, so let's try and look at each one of them. So connect by building rapport is something which we've already seen. Some of this might be a repeat with what we have discussed, but nonetheless, I want you to take a look at this. So when you connect with people, let's say you are going to talk to a stranger who might be a customer or a potential customer. One of the ways of connecting with people is also finding called common ground. What is common ground? कोई बता सकता है मुझे what is finding common ground according to you? So 10 seconds for you to drop a chat message. Can anyone tell me what is the meaning of finding common ground? सुना है कभी आपने इसके बारे में? Common taste, okay. Similar experiences, very true. Perfect, excellent. I think all of you have a fair idea about what is finding common ground. So when I talk about finding common ground, let's say you're talking to me. So Ram and you are meeting for the first time. When we meet the first time and we are having discussion, initial hi, hello has happened. We have understood each other's job. But now there could be certain elements which are common to you. For example, I love watching movies and you love watching movies. That's the common ground. Similarly, if you enjoy watching cricket, I enjoy watching cricket. That's common ground. Or we both are from the IT industry. That's the common ground. Or both of us love to watch some of the television serials which are of common interest. Anything. Okay. So anything which is of common interest. It could be business, it could be personal, it could be money, it could be investment, any topic. Anything which is of common interest can be a great way of building rapport with other people. And this is not just with total strangers, even with customers, or even when you're talking to, let's say you're part of a management institute and you're wanting to make friends out there. Look at people, what are their common interests when it comes to your interests? Oh, you love management studies? Great. What is your favorite subject? You know, I normally prefer learning more about management and psychology. Oh, wonderful. Even psychology is something which I find very interesting. Can you refer to me a few books or, you know, few authors who you think are really good at it? Oh, why not? Okay. And you see how the conversation goes ahead. So when you find something which is common interest between you two, the discussion moves ahead. So connecting by rapport building, you can look at something which is a common experience, and that is a shared experience or a shared view. And it can be equally important both in your professional life or in your personal life, right? So even if you're making a new friend, one of the reasons you have so many friends whom you call friends is that there is something common between you two. So how do you build connect? Here are a few points. One is be friendly but genuine. So even when you talk to a stranger, it's important that you're genuine. For example, when I said appreciate, remember the 4 steps that I spoke about? Acknowledge, question, listen, and appreciate. So even when you appreciate, be genuine, okay? Don't make it fake or cosmetic. Oh, that is wonderful, great. Other person will say, you know, ye chuna laga raha hai. That should not be the case, because when you appreciate, it has to come from your heart. So you don't need to go over the board. You need to only say, oh, that's good. That's really interesting. That is really fascinating to know. I'm very pleased to know that. Things like that are good enough. You don't need to make it look like, oh my God, that's not necessary. And this is something which you'll see with a lot of people, why they don't have great relationships. So if you want to build great relationships, there is no substitute to being genuine. We only want to talk to people who are genuine. You agree with that logic? Give me a show of hands if you agree with me. We don't want to talk to fake people. Yeah. Nobody likes cosmetic people. Sometimes people smile, they laugh, but you know they're cosmetic. They're wearing plastic on their face. We hate that. So very important that you're genuine with people. And here is what I said. You need to ask questions about people's life, because the more questions you ask about them, remember, everybody on this planet loves to talk about them. People love to talk about them. Okay. And because you ask questions, they find an opportunity to talk about themselves and tell you exactly what is happening inside their brain. So अगर आपको किसी के दिमाग में झांक कर देखना है ना, questions. That's why there's a beautiful phrase. It says, questions are the real answers. Questions are the real answers, which means when you ask questions, you get beautiful answers. And with those answers, you can further build onto your conversations. And then, as I said, you got to actively listen. Now, what is active listening? Although this session is not about listening skills, but in a nutshell, when you listen, there are 2 ways in which you can listen. One is called listening only through your ears. Sirf kanon ka istemal kiya. Okay. ठीक है. Good. Very good. That's very boring, right? Nobody wants to see someone who's listening for the heck of it. When you listen with your heart, which is a whole body activity. Okay. Understand that? Oh, that's interesting. Right? So you're also giving verbal cues. Remember, when you're listening, it is not just important to listen, but the other person should also understand that you're listening. I repeat what I said. When you're listening, it is not just important to listen, but also the fact the other person should feel that you are listening. Very important, because if the other person doesn't feel you're listening, he feels that he's talking to a wall. And that's what happens in a conversation. Many a times you're talking to people and the other person is, okay. And you said, what is happening here? I don't see any connect. Remember, it's important that you're connecting with people at a one-to-one level. And that's why listening involves conscious efforts. It doesn't happen naturally. It requires efforts. So you can't be talking to people even at an airport. And I've seen this happening many times. If you're talking to a stranger and the conversation starts and you're reading a book, what do you do? What do you do with that book? Just keep it away. Let that book be closed and kept aside for some time while you're having this conversation. If you're working on your laptop and you want to have a conversation with the other person, you are asking questions, he or she is asking questions, you're getting responses, close your laptop and keep it aside for 5 minutes. You don't lose the entire world in doing so, because that shows respect in the conversation. That shows you want to listen. And if you can do that, other people will also reciprocate. Otherwise, you're also in your laptop, he's also on his laptop, you're doing okay, okay. That's fake. That's not genuine. And relationships don't work like that. Okay. And as I said just now, you're going to find something which is called as the common ground. What is common between me and him? When you find that, it becomes that much more easier for you to connect with the other person. Last but not the least, and this is very, very important time and again, whether you are in your office or you are a student in a college, or you are a businessman holding your own business meeting, or for that matter, you are attending a meeting with your clients, wherever you are. if you want people to approach you, please make note of your own body language. If you sit like this, and now you're expecting people to come and talk to you, not going to happen, never. So if you want people to approach you, remember the old Ram that I referred to, who used to sit very, very seriously? People don't approach a serious person. Nobody likes to see a serious person. The only place where you can afford to be completely serious is in the ICU, not anywhere else. That's the only place where you have got an official license to look serious. Any other place, you're not supposed to look serious. You're supposed to look human. You're supposed to look smiling. You're supposed to look vibrant and flamboyant. Do you agree with that? Yeah. Give me a show of hands if you agree with whatever I've said so far. It is important that you come across as someone who's welcoming the conversation. And that's what helps you to build connect, to build rapport with people. Great. So I see people are in agreement with what we have done so far. So let's look at the next important step, which is called empathy. So you would have definitely heard two terms, and I'm 100% sure you would have heard these terms. One term is called sympathy, and the other term is called empathy. Okay? Sympathy and empathy. Can you tell me what is the distinction between the two? Go to the chat box and tell me what is the difference. Sympathy and empathy. What is the difference between the two? So I've also given you a hint some time back. कि sympathy और empathy में क्या फर्क हो सकता है? Yeah, sympathy is to console others. Very true, Dipanshu. Bhargavi says sympathy means we have concern about someone. Yeah, Maya says putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. Fantastic, brilliant. You already know half the answers here. Makes my life very easy. So we can now pause. We can now pause in the chat box and let's come back to the conversation. So two terms. One is called sympathy. The other is called empathy. Let me give you an example. You're talking to a friend and your friend tells you, "Arey, yesterday I was, just driving my scooter or my bike and it was raining heavily and I fell down. And I fell down bad. It hurt me here. So I started bleeding. I went to the doctor and the doctor treated me, but it's paining immensely even now." So you hear this conversation from your friend and you say, "Arey, that's bad, yaar. Aisa nahi hona chahiye tha." Kyun aise? It shouldn't have happened, you see. What is this? This is sympathy. Daya. Sahanubhuti. Okay. But interpersonal skills are not really about sympathy. You know why? Because nobody likes sympathy. Okay. When you show sympathy even to a small kid, he feels offended by it. So why are you showing me sympathy? I'm good enough to take care of myself. What you really need and what people really appreciate is your ability to empathize with them. Let's look at the same example. Your friend says, "Yesterday I fell from the bike. I got hurt badly. It is still paining." Oh, that must be really painful. Yeah, I know this because last time I did not fall from a bike, but I just was walking and I slipped over and I fell down, and I can still feel the pain even today. I understand how bad it must be for you. I can understand your pain. When I can understand your pain, that is called empathy. जब मैं अपने आप को आपकी जगह पर रख कर देख सकता हूँ, when I can step into your shoes and look at things from your perspective, that is called empathy. Okay, I'll give you an example. So 8 years ago, a very important thing happened in my life. An extremely important, earth-shattering, heaven-moving thing happened in my life. What was that? I got married. Okay, so 8 years ago, I got married. And after that, a few years later, my wife got pregnant. So we were expecting our first child. And so me and my wife usually have this habit of taking a walk on the road, walking together, so that we get time to also interact with each other as we're doing that. Now, here was a time when I used to walk with my wife when she was pregnant. Okay, so that was a huge change in the situation. So me and my wife were walking on the street, and suddenly I saw, when I turned, I saw that she was not there. I turned back and she was at least 10 steps behind me. I said, "Why is this happening?" And then I realized, because she's having a big belly now, she can't walk with the same speed that I'm able to. But in spite of realizing this, it kept on happening a few times. Every time I was to move forward, I was not walking fast, but she couldn't walk at natural speed. Okay. Now that was a challenge. That was a problem. But I found a solution, and I found a typical solution to this. And I found a solution at railway station. Okay. So I found a solution at Dadar railway station in Mumbai. What was the solution? Very interesting. So I was waiting at the platform, and you would know this and you would agree with me, because if you're a Mumbaiker, you surely know this. Even if you're not, If you've seen Mumbaikars, how do they board the train? It's something to watch. Yeah, it should be recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records, honestly. So I was waiting at the other station, and you know, whenever you're about to board a train in the local train in Mumbai, if you have a backpack, what's the first thing you do? You remove your backpack and you wear it in the front. Okay, just like a kangaroo would have its baby in the front, not at the back. So you remove your backpack, you wear it in the front. So when you wear it in the front, what happens is the weight is now pushing you back. So the next time around, whenever I used to walk with my wife, I used to make sure that I take my backpack with me and I put it in the front. Now, because there is 5 kilograms of weight along with the laptop and other stuff in my back, it is now pushing me back. Okay. And therefore, what is happening is that now I'm walking at the same speed at which my wife is walking. Okay. Now, why could this happen? This happened because I could empathize with my wife at that point in time. Because I could realize the fact that given her current physical condition, it's going to be very difficult for her to walk at the same speed that I'm walking. So the only way for me to stay in connect with her is if I can understand her situation. And that one small change did the trick, did the magic. Now, the fact I'm trying to point out is you don't need to wait for someone to become pregnant to understand them. Okay, that's not the point that I'm trying to make here. The point is empathy requires genuine effort on your part. Sometimes other people will not tell you how they are feeling. So you've got to identify how they are feeling. Sometimes their body language will reveal that to you. Sometimes it will be revealed through other things. Yeah. So Rohit has a suggestion here for me, said, sir, you could have just held your wife's hand and that could have sorted the problem. Well, that could have been an easier way, but I wouldn't have felt the weight, the burden that she was carrying. So I think I got much better and much deeper results because of what I did. But nonetheless, whatever works best for you, the whole idea is, are you able to be empathetic towards the other person? Now, this empathy, you need to sometimes show to your manager. Many a times we curse our managers for right reasons and wrong reasons as well. But are we able to step into his shoes and say, why is he doing something like this? Or why is he not doing something? Or for that matter, many a times when we have fight with our spouse, okay, whether your husband, your wife, or with your siblings, it's because we do not have the ability to empathize with the other person. Human beings are very greedy and human beings are very self-centered. Let's agree to that. All of us are self-centered and greedy. Give me a show of hands if you're honest to accept that. And because we are self-centered and greedy, what do? We only think about ourselves. Whereas empathy requires you to think of the other person. So the next time you are having a meeting with your client, try to think what is going on in his world, in his brain. When you have a discussion with your friend, keep your mouth shut. Listen to what your friend has to say. Try to step into his shoes. And perhaps the only thing that you need to say is, I understand your pain. I'm with you on this. And that will help you to forge a bond which will be stronger than anything that you could ever imagine. Okay. And therefore, empathizing requires you to relate, to understand where the other person is coming from. And the more you do that, the more you will see that your relationships improve. The conversations that you have are far more deeper. And therefore, the end result that you get from those conversations is always going to be much more favorable. Yeah. So that's something which is very, very essential whenever you do that. Okay. Okay, so here's a question that Prankur has asked. Prankur, my first suggestion is please drop your questions in the question and answer box. But nonetheless, since there is a question that has come up, I will take that question. So the question is, what do you do if someone, if someone's something that he or she does not respond? Okay, you say something and the other person doesn't respond. Well, it means there are multiple reasons for it. If the person is not responding, it could mean he's not interested. Okay, that could be one reason. Sometimes if the person is not responding, it means that he is undergoing some emotional turmoil. So the ability to empathize is not just to understand words which are spoken, but also understand words which are not spoken. That's why empathy is a difficult one. Every time the person will not say, "Mujhe takleef ho rahi hai, mujhe dard ho raha hai, samjho mujhe." No, nobody's going to say that. You will have to understand it by understanding what the person might be going through. So use your questions, small questions which will help you check the situation of the other person. So how do you go about showing empathy? First, as I said, the same rule applies that we looked at in Connect. Listen more than you speak. So here's a simple ratio that you can work with. It's called a talk to speak ratio, or rather the talk to listen ratio. Okay, so what is the talk to listen ratio? You talk 40% of the times and listen 60% of the times. So 60-40. Okay, so 60% of the times is listening and 40% of the time is talking. So that is one great way to show empathy to other person. Okay, as you can see in the picture, the person is genuinely interested. Look at the facial expressions, look at the eye contact. All of those are clearly hinting that I'm interested to know about you. Okay, now what you should not do when you're empathizing with someone. Someone is saying, "Arey, I want to share a problem." So, go ahead. So the problem is, yesterday I had a meeting with my boss. Main samajh gaya. What have you understood? Nothing. Let him complete. Let the other person complete what he or she wants to say before you come up with a result. Okay, so that's important. That's important that you give the other person enough time so that he or she can complete what he wants to say. That's also part of listening. That shows that you're concerned about the situation, that you're not just saying things because you wanted to do something. Acknowledge the other person's feelings. Very, 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 very critical. That don't just listen to the words that are being spoken, but also listen to what is not being said and refrain from making any judgment. A lot of times your friend tells you there is a problem. Arey, mujhe ek problem hai. Bata, kya problem hai? So, mera problem ye hai that this is what is happening, that is what is happening. So you see this is a problem. And then you listen to everything and then you look at your friend and say, "Tere ko pata hai, tu gadha hai, gadha." Huh? What are you saying? Tu gadha hai bilkul. What you're doing here is you're passing a judgment. You're not supposed to pass a judgment. When you listen, even if the other person is stupid, not making any sense, it's important that you listen to it without any kind of judgments. And when you do that, you can come up with better solutions. If at all you have to give solutions. Sometimes you don't even need to give solutions. All the other person requires is somebody to listen to him quietly. Do you agree with that? He doesn't look for a solution. Koi meri baat to sun le. That itself is a solution. And if you can do that really well, you would show amazing empathy towards the other person. Very, very critical that you stay silent, listen to the other person, do not interrupt, and make sure that you're able to receive the other person really well. There is a question that has been asked here. So I'm going to take that question here. And the question is, there are two questions in it. One is from Benny. He says, guys in charge of loans are not able to show empathy. Well, Benny, the answer to that, to cut the story short, what is the purpose of people who are wanting to ask for loans? Many a times they are not trained to show empathy. Okay, empathy is also something which requires people to be trained. It is not something that all of us naturally have. Okay, although we are all naturally human beings, showcasing empathy requires some sort of training. So you need to train people to show empathy, especially when you're working in departments where you're asking people to give loans, or for that matter, you call up your client and say, "Hey, when are you making our payments?" That requires empathy, right? Because even they are going through a lot of problems. Current situation, COVID situation, people's salaries are getting affected, they are getting delayed. So one needs to reciprocate by understanding people at a heart-to-heart level. But it doesn't come automatically. You have to train people on that, especially if they do not have an inkling or they don't have an idea of understanding the other person, they can't show empathy. Empathy cannot be done in a fake manner. So you have to train people on how to ask the right questions, how to show concern and empathy to other people. Yeah, so I perhaps believe that might answer your question. The other question that has been asked here is, how can we handle autocratic leaders who are not willing to listen and push their own decisions? Well, autocratic or dictatorial people. So the word autocratic, I would like to believe, is more people who are dominant, who want to enforce their opinion on other people. The fact is, when you have people who are enforcing their opinion on other people, they also end up being poor listeners at times, because they're only enforcing. It's a one-way traffic, right? So first and foremost, don't be like them. You cannot defeat an autocratic person by also being autocratic. So here is what you do. You allow the other person to complete, and then you assertively put across your point. So I understand what you said, but this is what I feel about it. You have never said, I agree with what you said. When you say, I agree with what you said, you have succumbed. Aapne hatiyar dal de. You don't do that. You say, I understand what you're saying. I acknowledge what you're saying. However, I do not agree with what you said. So it requires you to also demonstrate courage in the form of being assertive. Because if you're not assertive, you're going to allow the other person to completely roll down what you're going to say. So although not a great part of what we are doing right now, it falls more into the category of communication. But in general, when you have someone who's autocratic, outright dominant, let the person speak and complete. Do not interrupt, because that will only infuriate them, and then assertively come back at them and say, I understand, but I don't agree. Okay, that's the way you put it across. I'll take one more question before I move on to the next section. Here's a question by Madhusudan. He says, if we keep empathy with customer, they may always ask for price decrease, late payment terms. How do we handle and decide when to empathize, when do we not? Fantastic question. So Madhusudan, before you show empathy to customers like this, first and foremost, it is not only about that situation. It is about the relationship that you've had with the person over a period of time. So before you empathize, you also got to have some trust about the person. If you don't have trust, the person will come across as fake, because sometimes people also take undue advantage of your empathy. So sometimes you got to be empathetic, but not show your sensitivity or weakness to the other person, because then people start taking undue advantage. Sometimes you got to show empathy. I understand your position, that it's not the easiest of time for you, but tell me what best we can do to help you, because we need to get this sorted. We need to clear the payments in the next couple of weeks. So tell me what I can do to help you. Also, if you're seeing this as a recurring trend, perhaps you have been too empathetic. Yeah. So you've got to also be able to balance it out. If you're too empathetic, then people tend to take undue advantage. They misuse the empathy that you show. So the balancing act is very important. Sometimes you got to show different empathy levels to different people based on your experiences with them. So I think at the end of the day, we're all smart to realize where to show what extent of empathy. If you keep a common rule of being equally empathetic with everyone, may not work. So you got to, apply your mind based on the situation and accordingly go about it. Yeah. So give me a show of hands, guys, if you're with me in principle, agreement with me with whatever we've done so far. Fantastic. Brilliant. This is great to see. Okay, so we now come to the third element of interpersonal skills. So far, we have looked at two. We have looked at rapport building or connect, and we have also looked at showcasing empathy. The third one that we're going to talk about is the importance of collaboration. So what is collaboration and why is it important in today's context? I'm going to tell you a story. It's not actually a story. It's actually a real situation. So it's a situation which comes from the continent of Africa. So in the African continent, there is a community called Ubuntu. You have heard of a software called Ubuntu, which is also inspired from the same community. It is spelled as U-B-U-N-T-U, Ubuntu. So what is Ubuntu? Ubuntu is a community which lives in the forest. So in our context, we would call them Adivasis, okay? And the Ubuntus are famous around the globe because they have been living in the forest for generations now. Even today, the Ubuntu community survives in the forest and they're a very prosperous community. Why are they very prosperous? They're very happy. So one guy from the city decided to go and meet the Ubuntu community and understand what they do. So he went there and he lived with the Ubuntu community for a few months. Yeah. So he was a guy who was an anthropologist. Who is an anthropologist? Someone who studies cultures, civilizations, and people. So he spent time with the Ubuntu community for the next 3-4 months. So he learned their language, he understood their customs, but he couldn't understand why are these people so happy and prosperous. That question he couldn't get an answer for. He understood everything else. He understood the food habits, he understood their customs, their meetings. सब कुछ पता चल गया, मगर ये पता नहीं चला कि ये लोग खुश क्यों हैं. Why are they so happy? Why are they so prosperous as a community? They don't even want to leave the forest. They want to stay in the forest and be there forever. So after having spent few months, he said, enough. Now I need to go back to the city, the place where I belong to. I can't live here forever. So while he was in the car, he had brought his Jeep alongside. So he took his Jeep. And while he was driving outside, he saw all the community kids playing there under a tree. So this guy stopped his Jeep, stepped out, and he has a box of chocolates. Okay. So he had a box of chocolates. He kept the box of chocolates under the tree. And he invited all the kids and he could now communicate with them because he had known some part of their language. So he said, look, I've kept this box of chocolates under the tree. The kids were very happy. He said, but I'm not going to give you directly. What you're going to do is all of you will stand in a line, okay? In a horizontal line, like a race. And when I say 1, 2, 3, or when I clap thrice perhaps, you're going to start running towards the chocolates. The kid that reaches the chocolate box first gets more chocolates. तो जो पहले पहुंचेगा उसको ज़्यादा chocolate मिलेंगे, जो बाद में पहुंचेगा उसको शायद हो सकता है मिले ही नहीं कुछ. That's also possible. So all the kids were made to stand in a horizontal line and the race started. But something magical happened. As soon as the race started, none of the kids moved. They all were absolutely stationary. All the kids looked at each other. They held each other's hands. They walked towards the tree. They reached the chocolate box. They opened the box. Each kid got 3 chocolates. Very smart, isn't it? Now, this surprised the gentleman. So he went to one of the kids who was the fastest kid in the community. He said, "Kyun nahi bhag gaya? Why didn't you run? You could have got all the chocolates for yourself. Wouldn't that make you happy?" And here is what the child said. He said, "Absolutely, sir. If I went to the tree and I reached there first, I would get all the chocolates and that would surely make me happy. But that would also make all other kids unhappy. What is the use of my happiness if I'm the only person happy and others are unhappy?" That's a very deep statement, isn't it? Give me a show of hands if you agree with what the kid said. This is what is the essence of collaboration. And this is the reason why the Ubuntu community continues to be prosperous and happy. Many of us who call ourselves civilized, educated citizens are not happy with what we do. There are so many conflicts at the workplace. The reason for that is that we are very good at what we do, but we are not good at collaboration. We are not good at working with other people. And today's world requires human beings to be able to connect with other people. So how do we collaborate with other people? How do we go about working with them? Collaboration is basically getting best out of everyone. So again, goes down to the same points. Listen to what people have to say. So for example, if you're in a meeting, before you share something, it is said, always be the last one to speak. Let other people share their opinion. There is nothing wrong in that. So you collect opinion from the first person, from the second person, from the third person, and finally share your opinion. People respect that because you have shown respect. People reciprocate with respect. That's a small example of collaboration where you've given people a chance to speak first and you add your points later. Collaboration also means you're allowing different opinions to come into the boardroom. Or if you're a student, when you collaborate with your peers, ask your peers about what they think about a particular situation. You can get multiple ideas. That makes collaboration even more effective. But the essence of collaboration is when all of us have a common objective, that we all want to achieve something which is of common interest. Like in this case, all the kids wanted to have chocolates, but they were also conscious of the fact that we all need chocolates. It shouldn't happen that one guy has 10 chocolates and the other has nothing. And that is typically what is happening in the world today, isn't it? Some people have got too much, some people have got nothing. So collaboration is the ability where you're ready to share, where you're ready to participate, where you're ready to proactively contribute before you receive. That's why we use the phrase give and take. Look at the word which comes first, give, followed by take, not the other way around. So listen to people's ideas. Think what they have to add. Ask them questions so that they can share their suggestions. Okay. If people cannot complete all the tasks by themselves, see if you can contribute and chip in with some effort on your part. There are many people in the office context. Once they complete their deadline, they say, "Mera kaam ho gaya." But what about your team? Your team is still struggling. It's like Virat Kohli saying, "I have scored 50 runs, mera kaam ho gaya." No. Unless the team wins, your work is not done. Similarly, when you talk of collaboration, unless your team achieves what they're supposed to achieve, your job is not done. And that is also the essence of building great interpersonal skills. Now, you might say, "Main uska kaam kyun karu? Usko aadat lag jayegi." He will get habituated to this. Possible. Very, very possible. Out of 10 people that you work with, 1 or 2 might not work really well. But here's the thing. Human beings naturally tend to have a sense of reciprocity. They like to reciprocate things. So out of 10 people, 1 rotten apple, fair deal happens. But that should not stop you from trying to help the other 9. Because when you help people, people want to help you back. People want you to succeed. And that is the essence of collaboration. How can I start helping others so that they help me back in return? Without any expectations, when you do that, you naturally see that people help you. But the first and foremost thing is all of us have a common goal. And that common goal is something which keeps us on track. Also allow space for each other's ideas. I can disagree with Ram. Ram, I don't agree with what you said. Fair enough. Absolutely okay. But I will listen to you. Why? Because I respect you. And that is what you want in collaboration. You can disagree with people, but at least you can show respect by listening to what they have to say. You can think about what they have to say, and you can still disagree. That's okay. Be very, very flexible about your own needs. Okay. You're not here for trading. Don't be transactional. A lot of people think that it's all about transaction. I can impress people and I can get things out of them. No. Interpersonal skills work best when you do something without having a short-term expectation. You should have an expectation like every human being does, but don't have a short-term expectation. Look, I helped you today, you have to help me tomorrow. No, that may or may not happen. Sometimes people are not in a position to help you back immediately, isn't it? Give me a show of hands if you agree with what I said. Sometimes people are not in a position to help you back immediately. You've got to give them some time. Trust them. And when time comes, they will respond positively. You've got to be flexible. You can't be rigid. And as I said, you got to agree to disagree so that people are comfortable in allowing you what you want them to agree with. Not every time will people agree with you. Not every time will you agree with people, but it's all about listening to each other with a lot of respect. Okay. So, can you tell me one thing that you have done so far? If you're in a college, if you're in an institution or in the organization, I'm opening the chat box for 10 seconds. One thing which you have done to collaborate with people with you. Could be your family, could be your friends, could be your work colleagues, anyone. One thing that you have done excellent to build collaboration with people. Okay. So Akib says creating a win-win situation. How can it help both of us? Fantastic, Akib. Good. What else have you done? Anyone else would like to comment? Okay, being flexible with funds. Okay, also help people with finding a shortcut. Yeah, very true. Sometimes, you have a formula for success at the workplace that look, aisa karoge na, to customer maan jata, and you share it with others. People respect you for that. Yeah, so that's also good. Open to discussions. Fantastic. I love to see that. When you're open to discussion, so many things actually happen. Lalit says, I help my friend from his work so that he can share his experience as well. Okay. Sharing something with your business partner. I think, the terms that I'm getting to see here, I'm so happy to see this: respect, openness, willingness, yeah, helping, sharing credit. Very true, Biswajit, what you've said. When you are wanting to share credit, when you give others the opportunity for alignment, and that's what people like Mahendra Singh Dhoni do so fabulously well. Every time Indian team wins a match, especially when Dhoni was the captain, you would see a newcomer in the team holding the trophy. Yeah. And imagine you're playing your first match for the Indian cricket team holding the trophy. You would feel like amazing. You'd feel like Superman. And that tradition continues even today. In fact, I would go back to tell you an example where the Indian cricket team played their first test match with Bangladesh. Not with Bangladesh, sorry. They played it with Afghanistan. And Afghanistan was playing their first ever test match. And Afghanistan, as expected, lost the test match. So Ajinkya Rahane was the acting captain in that particular team. You know what he did? He invited the entire Afghanistan team to share the stage, and both the teams lifted the trophy together. That's a beautiful gesture, right? And that's why people with great interpersonal skills never have enemies. They always have opponents. I repeat what I said. People with great interpersonal skills never have enemies. Dushman nahi hote. You always have opponents. In Shuddha Hindi, we call it pratidvandi, competitors, opponents. But you don't have enemies. You don't need enemies here. There is so much already that is causing tension. You don't need enemies to add to that tension. So compete, but also learn to collaborate. And collaboration is the essence of winning in the modern world.